Clyde, I feel like this episode of Survivor is production's way of apologizing for the mistakes they made in Cook Islands as a season. That's my opening take for this episode.
You mean mistakes in terms of the theme, or what kind of mistakes are we talking about?
In terms of the theme, the number of players, the configuration of the season, Exile Island being useless after week 2, right? This is the first good episode of the season, and so much happens. I think the double elimination, the double vote in this episode is production's way of acknowledging they've messed up in the previous month of this season. That's my take. Welcome to Survivor Analytics, Season 13, Cook Islands, Episode 6. I'm the voice of the people. My name is Jack. With me, as always, the true expert. Say hi, Clyde.
What's up, party people? For once, I'm in full agreement with you, Jack. I think this is the best episode of the season so far. We check off every box that I'm looking for. We get a gruesome challenge, one that's absurdly violent, even by like the older era of Survivor standards.
Yeah.
So we get a competitive challenge, 2 people going out the door this week, lowering that number. I'm so happy that they chose to include this twist at this point in the season, especially given the entire Christina situation. I feel like Christina was so clearly on the bottom of her tribe that if we had to do an entire episode dedicated towards her boot, it would be an absolute drag. So I love the decision to have 2 tribal councils here. We get a weird twist. And on top of all that, this is a historically significant episode of Survivor.
Oh boy.
There's some real innovation that goes on here that I'll be excited to talk about later on. So there's a little cliffhanger for you.
You've got me excited. Like, this is a great episode. You texted me because you watched it before I did, and you said this is a great episode. I did not think I'd enjoy it as much as I did.
I'm good to jump in. The only thing I would say at the beginning of this is I feel like all season, Cook Islands has been very cowboy-centric, right?
Yep.
He's been one of the biggest players on the beach. I think you said earlier that he was one of your picks to come back in a future season, and we'll hit on that more later. For me, this felt like Cowboy's final chapter. Like, once again, he was the main character of the episode, but for some reason, this time it worked. The previous times I would get so annoyed with the Cowboy content. This is the first time of the season where I was excited to see how he would act and how the other players would perceive him. A nice bow on the Cowboy story. But let's jump right in. Do you want to start at the Raro camp?
Yeah, so fresh off of Tribal, Christina comes back swinging, very upset that people called her hard to work with. They were criticisms that she was a little bit too much, and her solution is to be more. It really feels like the worst way she could have gone about this, right? Because immediately she alienates herself more from the tribe. At least that's the sense I got. I'm going to make a statement, and then I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay, I'm ready.
If you're going to confront your tribe about their perceptions of you, going about it apologetically is the only way that will work well. Not aggressively like she does. But my question for you is, if you're in tribal council and you survive a vote where you've heard a bunch of criticisms of you, what do you do when you go back to camp?
I think you go back to camp, and like you said, you apologize to the group. You do whatever possible to rebuild those bridges. I disagree with your take that Christina was overbearing when they got back from tribal council.
Okay.
I thought Adam was the real one provoking her in this entire situation. She went to Adam, apologizes to him, and he flips out around the campfire. He says that she's annoying and it's just in her nature. It's a personality conflict. Like, Adam's not actually giving any kind of constructive criticism or a way that they can unite as a tribe. He's just saying that Christina is inherently flawed, which is kind of ridiculous. We get a confession of her in tears over her treatment by the rest of the tribe. It seems like no one else really steps up for her, and I don't really get it. I don't think Christina has done anything to warrant all this hate amidst the tribe. We saw a similar situation last week where one comment by Stephanie with the mashed potatoes and gravy caused the entire Raro tribe to flip against her, and now Christina dropped one octopus in the ocean, and she's the ultimate criminal of Raro. I wrote down, Christina might be a cop, but she committed the ultimate crime of being annoying. But I'm Team
Yeah.
Christina here. I don't think she did anything that wrong to really justify the way they're all treating her.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely doesn't deserve the treatment, but I wonder if her instincts as a police officer, right, are to be direct and self-defensive. Those are not typical successful traits on Survivor. And so that was where I was coming from in terms of like, you know, if I was hearing that people had a problem with me at Tribal and I wanted to resolve it, saying something to them like, hey, I'm really sorry you feel this way. Can we get to know each other a little bit better and maybe move past this? Because I think there's some miscommunication, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll also say the last thing with Christina is that I will need to buy into the theory that she's annoying a little bit because of the Jenny factor. Up until this point in the season, there's been 3 players that have called out Christina. One of them is Ozzy, who, in my opinion, is an unreliable source. He threw a challenge to vote out Billy. I don't trust him anymore. But he calls Christina an annoying figure on the original I2 tribe because she was this controlling cop and he was a free spirit. I don't trust Ozzy's assessment. Adam also calls out Christina on the original Railroad tribe. Adam had that entire argument on how he wanted to sleep on the ground.
Yep.
He was kind of the lazier figure of that group, so I don't really trust Adam that much either. But once Jenny calls out Christina, that's where, you know, the red flag raises for me. So we might not see a lot of her interactions, but given the amount of support behind that anti-Christina group, there has to be something there. But
yeah,
I'm good to go over to I2.
Yeah, I mean, over at I2, we're back to fishing, man.
Oh, what? More fishing?
The fishing storyline really seems to be Ozzy's entire thing on this season. It is constant with him. And it's, I don't want to fish. I'm fishing. I found these great places to fish and I could catch 10 fish in an hour, right? I mean, he is fishing up a storm. On one hand, I like it. I like that we're seeing somebody actually surviving on Survivor, right? That's great. On the other hand, we haven't seen Ozzy do anything conniving or strategic because all of his screen time has been fishing for like a month. And so when people start saying, I don't really trust Ozzy, right? Jonathan starts talking about it. I get the sense that he's kind of talking out of his ass because Ozzy hasn't had an opportunity to do anything conniving. I don't know. What is your take on this? Because it seems like Ozzy is being presented by production as, look, he's surviving. Get it? It's Survivor. And he doesn't seem to be doing anything else.
I would push back a little bit on the idea that Ozzy is not conniving because he threw the challenge in episode 2 to get rid of Billy. So there is a history of Ozzy actually playing the game, right? It's really been since the swap that Ozzy's been reduced to solely the fisherman.
Like, we know as the viewer that he was conniving, but on I2, he hasn't been.
And it's interesting, too, because Jonathan praises Ozzy for his fishing abilities, and he says, we need his strength for the group to move forward, but as an individual threat, he's the biggest threat. And I found that quote really interesting from Jonathan specifically because Jonathan's kind of a game bot. He respects the strategic part of Survivor. So I thought he would see someone like Yule as the biggest threat on the beach. But even though he's a strategic thinker, he still kind of falls back into that old school mentality and puts Ozzy on the pedestal, despite Ozzy not really doing much in the strategic side of the game. I wrote down that there are 2 guarantees in every Cook Islands pre-merge episode. One of them is that Cowboy will annoy the entire cast, and the second is that Ozzy will fish and we'll get some underwater shots. This actually marks the 3rd Ozzy fishing segment of the season. So we're averaging about 1 every other episode. I'll keep that data moving forward to see how many Ozzy fishing segments we get in the long run.
I think there might have even been another one in the next time on.
No, we can't go over 1 every other episode. That is just egregious.
I kind of hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
Hey, it's a safe bet, right? And I think we talked about this last week, but the general public adored Ozzy at the time of this season airing, and it kind of makes sense. If you turn on Survivor and you think it's a game solely about living on an island, then Ozzy is like the ultimate manifestation of that idea.
Which, you know, it's called Survivor, not be backstabby in conversations around camp. Or
yeah, it's not called The Deceit of Man, as Cowboy named it.
I would watch a show called The Deceit of Man. The next thing I have is Cowboy. Speaking of the tropes of this season.
Yeah, tell us about Cowboy and the immunity idol.
This is Cowboy's most spiritual episode to date. He, at this point, is worshiping the idol. He has decided that this idol is a water spirit of Cook Islands and that it is protecting them and it is how they will win challenges by honoring the idol. And he wants to bring the immunity idol along to the reward challenge. Bad taste, right? Just flexing that you have it in front of the other tribe. Jonathan picks up on that, and I think they get into it a little bit more than they need to. That's the first round of Cowboy for this week.
It's a wild segment from Cowboy. He describes the idol as Tangaroa, which is a Polynesian god of the ocean and fertility. Fun fact, Tangaroa has different meanings depending on which island of the Cook Islands you're looking at, and that god is only the god of sea and fertility on Rarotonga, on Raro. So it's interesting that Cowboy is praising this god that technically would be aligned with the Raro tribe.
That's funny. He's like, this is not my god, but I will still worship it.
Well, I think if Cowboy explained it to the rest of the cast, then maybe there would be some level of understanding. Granted, it's 2006 and they'd probably still scoff at him. At least that way, if Cowboy says that publicly, then Jonathan can separate himself and not take any blame for his actions.
That's a good point. I think that could have worked out in his favor, although I don't think it does.
Tell us about this violent challenge for the week.
This week's challenge is it's not immunity, but it is immunity. Because no matter who wins the challenge, everybody's going to tribal tonight. What they are playing for is the winning tribe wins a feast at the other tribe's tribal council. They will get to eat and spectate the event. Call me cynical if you want. Call me crazy. But I don't think that sitting in on tribal council is that valuable. Because unless there's some big move that is contentious and shows the divisions in the tribe, most tribal councils, and maybe this is why it's a compelling thing in season 13 and not in season 46, most tribal councils are so bland that you wouldn't get anything more than the Drew Basile-esque platitudes, right? And so, I don't know. I wasn't crazy about this as a reward because I felt like production was wanting it to feel more valuable than it is.
I believe that this reward is way more valuable in season 13, where contestants really have no issue spilling all their secrets at tribal council. Like in the modern day, this would be useless. It would honestly be more of a punishment to have to sit through a tribal council and listen to Drew's 50 different analogies connecting Survivor to Jeopardy. But in season 13, players are willing to reveal all of their secrets during tribal. Like half of the tribal that we'll discuss later in this episode, they make it blatantly clear that Christina is on the outs. She's annoying. We do not like her. There was information acquired by the other tribe there that they could have used against Raro, but they just chose not to. So honestly, my favorite part of the reward is the fact that they eat, lamb chops?
It's lamb shanks or chops and a big hunk of bread and a big jug of water.
The food that they selected for the reward was great because it's dripping everywhere. It's gruesome. It's a very public way of eating, if that makes sense. Like there's a showmanship to it in front of the other tribe, which I think added a nice element.
It almost feels historical, right? Where it feels like they're in this shipwreck and you could see somebody on that ship eating that meal.
Yeah, that's fair.
But so the actual challenge is, as Clyde said earlier, very, very physical. 3 members of each tribe have to hold on to a pole, and then 2 members of the opposing tribe, one at a time, a pair goes out and tries to pull one member of the opposing tribe off of a pole and drag them across the finish line. First tribe to drag all 3 members across wins. For Rero, we have Christina, Nate, and Jenny. For I2, we have Candace, Ozzy, and Sundra. And Cowboy sits out because they have an extra. My biggest notes are about Christina and Flicka.
Same.
Christina gets put in a chokehold by Flicka, gets pissed, and when Jeff says no choking, Christina turns around and basically, I don't know if it's an arm bar or a headlock, but essentially flips the script on Flicka and is like, don't choke me.
Yeah, it was
while
wild.
choking her. It's excellent. Badass.
There's also something great about those 2 players specifically having a rivalry because they're 2 of the more invisible people in the edit. Like, there's something hilarious about 2 of the background characters having a choke out in the middle of the challenge. But this was one of the most violent challenges I think we've ever covered on the podcast. The only other one that really comes to mind for me that can parallel this are the one in China where they're on the boat and they have to push each other into the water. That one's very physical. There was also the one on China where they're in the giant mud pit and Jeff releases the ball in the middle.
The like Rocket League simulator thing.
Yeah. This might be both of those in terms of physicality. It is absolutely brutal. And I don't think this is something that they would even consider running today.
I mean, I would be shocked. It was fun to watch. I don't think it was fun to do. It looks pretty unpleasant. You know, you're getting dragged through the sand.
I was surprised there were no injuries because I'm constantly thinking if you're pulling on someone like that, it's probably pretty easy to like dislocate a shoulder or a limb in some way with all that force. At the end of the challenge, they pan over the entire cast and Ozzy has 3 random scrapes across his neck. I don't know how those got there. Probably not from his fishing adventures earlier in the episode.
I kept expecting an injury or like if I had 2 dudes trying to pull me off of this thing and I'm holding onto it and they pull my arm away, I would have to imagine it takes a lot of self-restraint to not elbow someone in the face, right? And fight back.
Yeah.
And the fact that no blows, right? It was all grappling and not hitting, I thought was some impressive control in a situation that could easily get really heated.
Yeah.
But
I2 ends up winning the challenge, which is also another shocker. I feel like Rero at the surface seems like the more physical tribe between the 2. You have guys like Adam and Nate and Christina all in that group. Like, I expected Rero to win, but they dropped it probably because I2 has the idol.
God is on their side.
And speaking of God and visions, we can go back to the I2 camp, right? Where we are introduced to Plan Voodoo. Cowboy has a dream where he was presented multiple credit card applications.
A shaman lady with, quote, all kinds of credit card applications. Excellent. Excellent dream.
And in presenting those applications, the lady says you can have 3 of American Express and 3, I forget what the other credit card was. MasterCards. 3 and 3. That's how you defeat the immunity idol.
That's how you kill God. And that's the plan.
Well, it's not just the plan, but it's Survivor history. This is the first time in Survivor that someone proposes splitting a vote as a way to negate the immunity idol. The idol's introduced in season 11, and it's not until season 13 that someone comes up with this idea.
So it actually is genius.
It's actually genius. I love watching Cowboy on this season because, you know, it's easy to poke fun at Cowboy. He's the perpetual punching bag of the edit. But when you look at the season at large, he's probably one of the best strategic minds on the island because he discovers something that no one else really thought of. Like, maybe players thought of this idea in the past, but we have no evidence of anyone expressing it before Cowboy.
It's a shame that he comes up with the idea and is so proud of the idea that he tells everybody.
And that's the irony of this entire situation, where Cowboy has one of the most innovative thoughts in Survivor history. And all he needs to do is find someone to hop on board with this plan. And he goes to the one person that holds the immunity idol on the entire cast in Yule. And he wants to split it between Jonathan and Candace, which honestly, I don't think is a bad plan either. We might hit on this a little bit later on, but through the first 6 episodes, there has not been a single original Raro member voted out of the game. All the white people are still there.
Yep.
And Cowboy seems to be one of the few players that really catches on to that. He says, we need to even up these numbers somehow. Otherwise, we're at risk of, our worst nightmare and also production's worst nightmare of the whiteys ruling the post-merge, right? Like
a final 5 that is all white.
Really?
In this season?
No, seriously. Like, that's a huge concern, both like from an in-game perspective, because those people are aligned, but also production. They're probably sitting back thinking, oh man, we're over a month into this and we haven't lost anyone from that tribe yet.
Yeah, that would be really bad.
So, I don't know. You can criticize Cowboy all you want, but I think this segment shows that there is a stroke of genius there. And it's interesting that he partners this idea with a lot of his spirituality throughout the episode, both with the dream and the idol.
Well, here, let me pitch something to you. Let's just go into this tribal, and then we can go back and do the Raro tribal.
Okay.
And do the post-challenge Raro. Like, let's do it that way. He pitches this idea. He rallies the group around, you're a J or you're a C. He hands out assignments, and people seem interested. We don't see a lot of defiance from it in that moment. And honestly, it's a pretty good plan. And there's a whole bunch of people in that room, in that camp, who a camp is like a room without walls, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Who don't like Jonathan very much, or who have concerns about Candace. I could see this working. I think where it goes south, or most clearly goes south, is at Tribal. Because at Tribal, we have 2 things that happen. Yule is asked about Cowboy after Cowboy has brought the idol and it's caught Jeff's attention. And Yule is very diplomatic and kind. And he's like, this is a complex guy. I respect him. I don't think I understand him, but that's because he's, such a cosmopolitan, spiritual, wise guy, right? There's a lot to him. And it would be a discredit to him if I said I understood him fully after such a short time. Great job, Yule.
That's one of my favorite things about Yule. I feel like he's willing to admit when he doesn't know something. He has a similar confessional earlier in the episode where he says, I trust Jonathan fully, but it seems like no one else really trusts him. So maybe I need to reconsider my perception.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big Yule head. I've been saying that for weeks. Then Cowboy speaks up and essentially says, look, yeah, we're going to flush out the immunity idol tonight. Somebody here has it, and we're going to do a vote that'll flush it out. And we're going to split the vote, and it's going to be 3 people voting for Jonathan and 3 people. Like, he doesn't say it explicitly, but he gets as close as he possibly could. At that point, he's gone.
Oh, see, I think he was gone before the tribal council even started. I think this was really a decision between Becky, Sundra, and Yule, because they're the ones playing the middle between the potential split vote, where I think in that split, the primary target is Jonathan, or just knocking out Cowboy because he's on the bottom. They've already established that core alliance of 5 last week. So I think from Becky and Yule's perspective, yes, Cowboy has this incredible idea. He proves that he has some strategic acumen in the game, but he's also such a wild card. I think he's someone that they just perceive as an unreliable ally. And even though like Jonathan can come across as a little bit schemy, Jonathan seems like a very logically based player. If you want to work with Jonathan, you need to present a strategic argument in how it's going to benefit his game. Like, you have a clear approach with Jonathan moving forward. And I don't really know what that is with Cowboy. Where do you stand on this? Do you think it would have been better for Yule and Becky and them to keep Cowboy around?
Well, I think from Yule's point of view, he doesn't want the idol to be flushed. Because if they try to flush the idol and it doesn't show up, he floats to the top of that list.
Yeah.
I think that's really what does it, is Yule's vulnerability. Because for the other people, you want to keep Cowboy. You can get rid of Cowboy at any point because he drives everybody on the other tribe nuts, right? You get to the merge, he's an easy sacrifice.
Yeah.
In an exchange. Jonathan and Candace, members of the majority, they are strategic players. One of them might have the idol. I think the tipping point could very well have been Yule. Or it could have been Cowboy over-talking it and overselling it, and everyone else going, wait a minute, if I go along with this plan, Jonathan and Candace, one of them's going to survive and be gunning for me, right?
Yeah. At that point, you have someone that's clearly on the bottom. That's the target for the following week. But I agree with what you said in that I think Yul was the real person directing the vote. I think we get a segment of Becky talking to Yul and saying, the girls don't trust Jonathan. We want to knock him out. So even though we don't have the footage to back it up, I'm under the assumption that Yul was the one that kind of swayed the target back onto Cowboy. And he said, let's roll with the original 5. We have it all locked down. Let's just take our next steps from here.
Yeah.
Any other highlights from that tribal council, or am I good to go to the vote?
I have one more highlight, and it's that during the voting process, we get reaction shots from all the potential votees, Cowboy, Jonathan, Candace, and then in a very Muppet-esque moment, we get a reaction shot of the idol like it's a person.
That's great.
Like, it's shot the exact same way, which I absolutely loved. And that's all I've got.
So your final vote here is 6 on Cowboy, 1 on Candace, 1 on Jonathan. The only person that participates in Plan Voodoo with Cowboy is Flicka. So she's probably positioned on the bottom of that tribe moving forward.
Yeah.
Were you sad to see Cowboy go? It's been the Cowboy show for the last month or so.
You know, I was actually. He was a lot of fun for all of his foibles, for his political incorrectness, his strangeness. I like a character, and we have had seasons we have seen, especially in the first decade of Survivor, there's a lot of bland bartenders and wannabe actors and models from LA. Cowboy is certainly not that. He is unabashedly himself, and that self is strange, and that's great. So I'm sad to see him go, but at the same time, it would have been nice to see a Jonathan go, but at the same time, keeping a Jonathan in contention for further down the line makes for more interesting potential votes in the future or strategic development.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like if Cowboy stuck around, you'd get better character moments, but the strategy of the season would probably be a bit more bland than if Jonathan goes home here.
Yeah, I mean, it's the dichotomy between this is a game show and a reality TV show.
Yeah.
And you can't have both all the time.
And I will say, I think Cowboy's one of the shining lights of the pre-merge. I think if you were to ask any random person off the street who goes home in the pre-merge of Cook Islands, as you do to complete strangers.
As you probably do.
But Cowboy's at the top of the list. Like, I don't think many of the other pre-merge boots are that memorable. Like, I would have liked to see...
Except for Billy Garcia.
Well, except for Billy Garcia, but that, goes without saying that he's number one in the pre-merge and the post-merge combined. I don't know. I think I would have liked to see Cowboy stick around a bit longer, especially when I feel like we still have some non-factors on the cast. Like, I'll throw some shade. Like a Jenny on Raro, who's pretty
Jenny's
invisible.
got nothing going.
Like a Rebecca or Sundra. Like, I do feel like we invested a lot of time in Cowboy for someone that ultimately placed, 15th? There is some criticism with the edit there, but I was happy with the Cowboy experience at large. Do you think Cowboy comes back for another season?
Yes.
Unfortunately, this is Cowboy's one time on Survivor.
No.
He enters, he changes the strategic game, and he walks off into the sunset. I actually found a video of Cowboy posted by World Nomad in the year 2015.
Okay.
Cowboy now lives as a nomad in Cambodia. He describes himself as a healer, and he still practices Eastern medicine. And in that same video, you will find that Cowboy now has a large Survivor Cook Islands tattoo right across his right pec. So he's got the logo right there for anyone to see.
That's some commitment to a show you were voted out of before the merge.
Whoa, okay. He changed the game. He changed the show.
He did change. Yeah, I guess he did.
Jeff should get Cowboy tattooed on him out of respect. I think it's a two-way street in my mind. But I love that even after the show, like, he never let Hollywood get the best of him. Like, Cowboy's still the eccentric character today that he was, all the way back in 2006.
That is pretty great. The other thing I will throw out is in his exit interview, he does blame the Asians.
Wait, like exactly? He says, I blame the Asians?
He says, clearly, I can't trust those in my community because he literally says it's the other Asians are the reason I'm going home.
Well, honestly, he's not wrong, right? if Yul and Becky wanted to side with him, they could have pulled the numbers on his side. Another great strategic read by Cowboy, or maybe he was just a little bit bitter there.
Yeah, that was kind of a tough. I could feel production going, ooh, do we need to put that on the air? Like, we're gonna get some letters if we air this, but he's not wrong. But now the Band-Aid is ripped off, and we get to rewind to Rero's post-challenge time. They know that because they're not going to have a feast, they have to provide one of their own, and they get one. Nate kills another big octopus. It is the same kind of octopus as previously covered on the show.
The red-footed... No, that was the bird. I don't even remember the name of the octopus.
The bird's the red-footed booby. The octopus, I don't have my notes from that episode with me at the moment, but it was a pretty typical octopus. The same kind that was wrapped around, I think, Nate, before.
No, it was Adam that had the octopus on his foot.
No. There was one when they were out in the ocean.
Oh, yeah, that was Nate. Yeah, sorry. Too many octopi this season.
Because the one on Adam is the one I couldn't identify.
Yeah, the mystery octopus.
The mystery octopus. Yeah. But so they have octopus, and basically Christina is going on a PR tour. I didn't believe it for a second.
This felt like one of the more predictable votes of the season. Like, Christina was so clearly positioned on the bottom, and she does whatever she can to survive, right? I respect the hustle. She did more than Stephanie did last week when she was on the bottom, but she begs to Brad and Parvati. She apologizes to Adam. And then we get this conversation between Christina and Nate, which I just found hilarious because Nate's walking past Christina and she touches his arm and says, "Give me another chance." And he goes, "Yeah." And at first I thought, oh, Nate's lying. This is just an offhanded comment that you tell Christina to placate her in the moment.
Right.
We then fast forward to Nate attempting to save Christina. That one comment from her completely shifts his opinion. It's the Stephanie mashed potatoes and gravy situation all over again.
Yeah.
We see Nate go and talk to Rebecca about potentially saving Christina and instead voting out Jenny because there's a lot of original Puka members remaining on the cast because this is before Cowboy goes home. So I think all of the Asians are still around right now. A solid idea from Nate, but I was just shocked that, that one comment from Christina was enough to win him over.
To be honest, he doesn't really have a ton of justification other than I think he's trying to make a move for himself. This is Nate trying to go, what if I can get an ally who owes everything to me? He's in a position right now where he's kind of one of Parvati's boys.
Yeah.
Not a bad spot to be in, but if you want to have any agency in the game, you need to make a move. And preserving Christina could potentially work out for him.
I would actually respect the move to keep Christina around from his perspective, because who else does Christina have to run to now? Like, if you look at that original I2 tribe, it's been decimated in the pre-merge. Billy goes out episode 2. Cecilia goes out episode 3. JP goes out. Only 2 people from that tribe are still around, and one of them is Ozzy, who Christina beefed with in the pre-merge. She does not have many options. If Nate saved her here, she would be indebted to him moving forward. But that's not really what happens. You want to go to Tribal Council?
Yeah, so this is the Feast Council. So Jeff brings over a bucket of lamb and a giant hunk of bread and a jug. And essentially, I2 sits in the jury seating and feasts and watches. But there's a twist before the vote.
Well, there's an even bigger twist with Candace, if you saw that moment.
Twist with Candace? I must have missed this. What is this?
When Candace sits on the jury and eats the lamb, she looks over at Adam and blows a kiss to him in the middle of Tribal, where Billy once sat. Candace has the nerve to blow kisses to another contestant? And then Adam is laying it up too. Like, Jeff always asks Adam a question about the challenge in every Tribal Council because Jeff loves his Meat Boys. And Adam gives credit to Candace. He says that she dominated in the previous immunity. And then we pan to Candace, who mouths, "I love you," to Adam.
I missed this.
What are we watching right now? I thought we were going to pan from that scene to like a flashback to Billy, and it was Candace like
God.
remembering their fond moments together. But she's head over heels for Adam, and they spent 6 days together on the same tribe. They haven't been around each other in like a week.
To be fair, that is hundreds of thousands of times more time than she spent with Billy.
But it's about what you do with the time. You know what I mean?
It's quality over quantity. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the impact of Billy was so much more than Adam. All Adam did was complain and tell the tribe that they don't need to build a shelter. And somehow Candace found that attractive. But I was shook during that entire segment. I couldn't even pay attention to what was going on in the tribal council because my heart was so broken for Billy.
Not much happens in the tribal council before the twist, which is I2, and this is an insane twist, by the way. I2, before the vote, I think after discussion, though, all the deliberation has been done. Before the vote, I2 gets to kidnap, claw a machine over into the tribal council area, snatch somebody up, and pull them away. Whoever they pick cannot be voted out and will stay with them through the next reward challenge, meaning they will compete in the next reward challenge with whoever this is, and whoever this is gets to eat right now in the feast. And they pick Nate. How did you feel about this? I feel like you have a good insight here.
It's ridiculous because the entire tribal council, all they heard was Rero bashing Christina. They said she was annoying. They said, she's a non-contributor to camp life. She dropped the octopus in the ocean. So then from I2's perspective, here's an opportunity to mess up the tribal dynamics over on Rero. You can take Christina out of the equation and force them to turn on each other. Because honestly, I don't know who goes home if Christina is safe there.
Yeah, it would be absolute chaos.
I think we would get like 2 to 4 people with votes on them because the entire tribe was so locked in against her. I thought this was such a prime opportunity for I2 to mess up Rero. But when they select Nate, I think they do it for 2 reasons. One, they're thinking about the challenge. They want to win reward, and Nate's a beefy guy that can help them win reward, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that important, but it's old school Survivor. We think about the next challenge in front of us rather than the long-term game. So that's one reason. And the other is that they're comfortable with letting Christina go. I don't think there's anyone on I2 that would really fight to keep Christina around in the game. And maybe there's a concern that if you pull Christina out of that equation, then you could have one of the original Puka members or one of the original Rero members go home, which goes against the best interest of that tribe. So
I think this choice shows not only like the old school Survivor instinct of we want to win a challenge, so let's pull a meat boy, but in what you just said, right, the decision to protect potential loss of old allies, pre-swap allies, versus throwing the post-swap tribe into chaos, right? Says a lot about where people's heads are at, that some people are at least operating on a basis where they hope to work again with some of those people that they used to be on the tribe with.
The Nate selection was also interesting in that I feel like they could have taken Adam there. I'm good to go to the vote if you are.
Yeah, is it 5-2?
It is
6-2?
I think I had 4-2 written down, but that
I have 4-2 written down as well, but that feels wrong. Well, Nate doesn't get to vote.
So it's a 4-2, 4 on Christina, 2 on Jenny. Do you know who the 2 votes against Jenny come from? One of them is obviously Christina. Who do you think that mystery vote comes from?
That's a great question. I'm going to have to assume, I'm going to guess Adam.
That's incorrect. The right answer is Brad, where once again, what? Why is Brad voting against Jenny here?
That's weird.
They were on the same tribe together. They've been OGs from day one, and
we haven't seen a single problem with them.
Yeah, I guess Christina made a compelling case to Brad. Like, that was another vote that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm still struggling to figure out the core alliance of Rero. I have a sense that it involves Parvati, Nate, and Adam in some way, just because I feel like those 3 get a lot of screen time. But outside those 3, I don't know where the lines in the sand are right now.
That's weird.
But Christina goes home, 4-2 vote. R.I.P. Christina, a.k.a. Christine. Do you think she comes back
No.
in a future season?
I don't think so.
Would you want to see her come back?
No, she didn't do anything.
Yeah, well, you are right. Production agrees with you. Christina does not return. We still have 5 returnees out of the last, 14 players. So
the way I think about if somebody can return or will return is you have to be in one of two categories. You have to either be a really unique person or archetype, right? A Shambo, a cowboy,
a Carolyn,
sure, a Banu. You can't be pigeonholed because you are such a big personality. Strategic play aside, you add something interesting and give the cameras a good storyline. That's option 1. Option 2, you don't have to have a really interesting personality type. You can be just a normal person, but you have to play a really great game. I feel like most returning players tend to... Oh, I would also put Russell in that first category.
Really? That's interesting. I think he fits into both. I think he checks both boxes.
He fits into both, which is why he definitely comes back, right? But I feel like he's such a villain that he goes into the first. You have to be either the reality TV side or the game show side.
Yeah.
And you have to excel in one of those directions. Russell Hantz, the rare combination of both.
And Christina, the common example of fulfilling neither.
Yeah.
Christina conducted one of the quarantine questionnaires by EW, so I have some info on Christina post Survivor.
What's she got going on?
She works for a police publication. She's developing an app for first responders. Her biggest regret on Survivor was not knowing much about the game. She admits that she thought Survivor was primarily focused on literally surviving the elements. So that's unfortunate.
Maybe if it was named The Deceit of Man, she would have done better. Yeah.
But my favorite tidbit from Christina was that she remains in contact with a handful of players, like Cecilia. I think she mentioned that her and Ozzy will say hi to each other at events. But she remains in contact with Billy, which warmed my heart. So I think Billy might be one of the best connected players after the show. A great social player post-season, if you will.
That's nice. Maybe he'll come back. Maybe he'll be in 50.
Maybe he'll make a series of like deep cut people that I'd want to see on 50, because Billy would for sure be on there.
No, you totally should do that. I'd watch that.
I'd also note that with the elimination of Christina and Cowboy, we have 1 original I2 member remaining in Ozzy, 3 original Hiki members, 4 Puka, and all 5 Rero.
Man.
The Whiteys are sticking around in the pre-merge right now. So we'll need to keep an eye on that moving forward.
Oh boy. I mean, something's got to give, right? It's just a matter of time.
Well, who do you think would be the first one to go home? The 5 there are Parvati, Adam, Candace, Jonathan, and Flicka.
Jonathan. I think he is too big of a threat to stick around too much longer.
Okay.
I think and if Yule, his close ally, is reevaluating, and Cowboy has raised the question of, I think Jonathan might have the idol, I think there's enough momentum there to get him out.
I guess the concern there for Yule is if you take out Jonathan, then you eliminate the suspicion surrounding Jonathan. Like, you might want to keep Jonathan and Candace around as long as possible. That way others think they hold the idol. Winners and losers. I'm assuming we have the same winner, right?
You have Yule?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yule is a clear winner here. He keeps his ally Jonathan in the game. He knocks out a player that he himself says that he does not understand. Cowboy goes home. So I feel like everything went Yule's way this week. He's kind of dominated the pre-merge so far. I think he's had one of the best pre-merge games on this cast. I think him and Parvati are probably the 2 best players so far in the early game.
Who's your loser?
My loser is Flicka.
Yeah, mine's Ozzy.
Oh, okay. I'll be interested to hear the Ozzy take. But for Flicka, she's clearly on the outside of the I2 tribe. She was the only person left out of the Cowboy plan. And I think she's next on the chopping block. If they're sticking with that group of 5 of Yule, Sandra, Becky, Jonathan, and Candace, there's only 2 people on the outs in Ozzy and Flicka. And sorry, but Flicka seems like the more expendable player there.
Well, and so I guess my reason for picking Ozzy is pretty much the same reason you pick Flicka, except for that I think Ozzy could be on the chopping block there because he's a bigger threat. We've seen it was established this week, right? Jonathan said, I don't trust him. I don't want to keep him around too long. He is a meat boy, but as you get closer and closer to a merge, meat boy value drops quick. Yeah, he catches the fish, but how long can that carry somebody? And so where Flicka is kind of a non-entity, right? Ozzy seems to be known as a player. Flicka is there for vibes.
That's fair. I also have a take that I think Ozzy, and we might have hit on this earlier in the season, but I think Ozzy would fare way better if he was swapped onto the Raro tribe. I get the sense that I2 has a lot of the game bots with like Yule, Jonathan, and Becky, whereas Raro focuses based on the last thing that happened to them in terms of who dropped the octopus in the ocean or who said they were hungry last. I think Ozzy falls more into that camp, and he would get along with the people there a lot better than the I2s. Quick dishonorable mention for me. My dishonorable mention goes to Loyalty. Candace is out here blowing kisses to Adam. I remember the sparks, Candace. They were there between you and Billy. He talked about those sparks at that exact same tribal council stage, and I just think it's disrespectful to have these public actions of affection where Billy once stood. So, quick dishonorable to Loyalty. Who's your honorable this week?
My honorable mention goes to whichever member of production had to sanitize the bucket before they served the lamb to the contestants in the bucket. Because somebody absolutely had to clean up that bucket. And maybe, I'm not saying like perfectly, like, you know, cover it in antibacterial soap, but somebody had to wipe down the bucket before they filled it with lamb shanks. And whoever that is, shout out to them. So ridiculous.
I don't know. This is 2006 Survivor. I wouldn't be surprised if they just grab some like rusty old bucket and say, put the lamb chops in there. You got to work for everything in this game.
The rust is flavored, dude. Don't worry about it.
It's Old Bay. It's
See, I'm sure they had to do something, right? And so shout out to whoever had to clean that up.
Nice. Well, that's everything I have for this week.
Good episode.
Any highlights from the next time on that I never watch? Anything I should look forward to for next week?
I didn't write anything down, I'm afraid.
Well,
so
that's your area of expertise.
usually, well, I think the fact that I didn't write anything down means that it was pretty bland.
Oh, it was more fishing?
I think there was some fishing and I was like, oh, that's funny. But I don't think there was any big twist where like the twist this week of the double vote was revealed ahead of time. But I feel like we're turning it around. We're out of the doldrums here.
It feels like the season's picking up more. I still think there's a couple background characters that we need to get rid of to focus on the real contenders. And maybe this pre-merge is just egregiously long, but I'd say we're like 2 episodes away right now. We're 1 away from being 1 away.
Yeah.
And then we'll really hit the ground running. But thanks for keeping up with us, and we'll catch you next week for episode 7 of Survivor Cook Islands.